Hey guys, tonight we're slipping back into the wind-swept alleyways of Renaissance Florence. The sun is just beginning to peek through lion curtains, casting long golden slivers of light onto the cool stone floors. Outside, a pair of pigeons coo softly on a terracotta ledge. You lie still beneath heavy wool blankets, your head resting on a two-flat pillow stuffed with straw, the scent of lavender tucked inside for luck, or maybe just tradition. Your hair long, dark, and hopelessly knotted from the night's turning sticks to your cheek. You hear the scrape of wood on stone as your chamber door opens, and in comes Isabetta, your lady's maid. She's been up since before sunrise, warming water over the kitchen hearth and humming that same tune about Saint Agnes she always sings when it's laundry day. She doesn't speak yet. She simply moves to the window, unlatches the shutter, and the full force of the morning breeze flutters through, stirring dust and unraveling a ribbon that had clung to your head during the night. Isabetta tuts gently. Too windy today, she murmurs, more to herself than to you. You'll need something stronger than silk if you want to keep your secrets in place. You blink, trying to remember what secret she means. Perhaps the one about sneaking down to the courtyard last week, when the baker's son was delivering the sweet rolls. Perhaps the other about your mother's pearl comb that disappeared after your cousin's last visit. But before you can gather your thoughts, Isabetta's already pouring warm rose water into a ceramic bowl. She begins the delicate ritual of untangling your hair, starting at the ends, her fingers deft and experienced. The comb she uses is carved from bone, shaped like a crescent moon, cool against your scalp. She chatters softly no how Signora dell'Imbria wore her veil crooked at mass, how the market is overpriced again, how the wind today might blow away the sins of the city. You nod, or perhaps doze. The sensation of your hair, being carefully drawn through practiced hands, has always made your eyes heavy. As she works, you catch sight of your own reflection in a mirror of polished tin. You look strange without your head covering. Exposed. A little too honest. In Florence, a woman's hair is both ornament and liability. Too much of it shown in public could spark gossip or scandal. Too little care, and one might be mistaken for a servant. Too extravagant, and the church might frown, or worse, the neighbors might whisper. Historians still argue whether these rules were born from modesty or controls it really about piety, or simply the city's way of keeping women in their place, behind fabric and netting and braids wound tight like secrets. You exhale. Isabetta is nearly done. She smooths the final strand behind your ear and presents you with a choice, the day's first dilemma. Do you want the saffron cap today? She asks, holding up a square of fine lion, embroidered with tiny vines. Or shall we try the new crispine? The one with the silver beads. You reach for the crispine without thinking. It smells like cloves and cedarwood, and you imagine it will glint slightly when you pass through sunlight. As she ties it carefully around your head, not too tight, not too loose, you wonder if this will be the day the wind tests your patience. You step to the window as she gathers her things, and you look down at the street below. Women in every direction, all adjusting, securing, readying. Each had its own quiet fortress. Somewhere, a bell tolls. Morning has officially arrived. You brush one last strand behind your ear, and for a moment, your reflection in the tin smiles back with a little more confidence than before. Your secrets, for now, are safe. Isabetta has just left, and already your scalp tingles where the crispine presses gently along your hairline. You descend the stairs of your family's stone house, cool underfoot, and into the morning hush of the main room. The fire has gone out, but the hearth still smells faintly of last night's rosemary embers. You pass through the archway into the storage alcove, where an old, dust-covered vanity stands guard against time. On it lie the tools of daily defense, combs, ribbons, and one tiny knife used for trimming split ends. You reach for the ivory-handled brush with missing bristles, and as you draw it through your hair beneath the netting, you wince slightly. It's the 5th time this month your brush has caught on something sticky. A strand comes loose, twisted, stubborn, and still tangled despite Isabetta's careful work. You sigh, not just from the pain, but from the realization, keeping hair presentable in Renaissance Florence is more about strategy than beauty. Your hair, if left ungoverned, is a liability. It invites judgment. That's why every noblewoman, every merchant's wife, every daughter of a notary has a personal grooming arsenal. Yours is modest. A tortoise shell come gifted by your aunt, a small bottle of rose oil, a sachet of dried rosemary, and meant to hide the occasional unpleasant smell of city air. And, of course, the mirror. Not glass, no. That's reserved for the truly wealthy. Your mirror is polished metal, slightly warped, but still capable of reflecting enough detail to help you see the frizz forming above your ears. You remember your mother's warning, frizz means forgetfulness, and forgetfulness means gossip. She wasn't entirely wrong. In Florence, an errant strand could mean you overslept, didn't pray, or had a secret you were too distracted to contain. You brush more carefully now. In the courtyard, a pair of pigeons land on the balustrade and coo like old women exchanging news. You watch them bob their heads at one another before pecking at invisible crumbs. You're reminded of yesterday's visit to the apothecary, where the herbalist insisted that boiled chamomile worked better than egg whites for tamming curls. Historians still debate whether egg whites were actually used in hair care, or simply mistaken for a cosmetic in written recipes. The lines between medicine, vanity, and alchemy blur often in Renaissance texts. One scroll suggests olive oil infusions, another recommends crushed figs, yet another advises whispering to one's come for luck. You tried that last one once. Nothing happened except Isabetta walked in and gave you a look you've never forgotten. A soft knock at the outer door stirs you from your mirror. It's Chiara, your neighbor and companion in all things dramatic. She enters carrying a small cloth bag, and the kind of grin that means she's brought scandal. She pulls from the bag a long hairpin with an ivory tip. From Venice, she whispers, "An enchanted." You raise an eyebrow. Well, she amends, the merchant said it was enchanted. But you know how they are more poetry than proof. Still, the hairpin is beautiful. Intricate vines carved around its handle, a tiny mother-of-pearl flower at the end. She insists you try it. As you lift your arms to twist your hair into a makeshift chignon, Chiara begins weaving a tale of a lady who wore a pin like this and caused a painter to fall so deeply in love he forgot to finish his commissions. The model with the enchanted bun. You both laugh. But you also both glance at the mirror briefly, instinctively. Just to see. Just in case. With the pin in place, your crispine feels more stable. The breeze coming through the window tests your handwork but does not succeed. You're ready, perhaps, to leave the house. Before you go, Chiara leans in and whispers something you already know. Mariana wore her hair uncovered in the market yesterday. On purpose. You gasp. It's not just the social risk, it's the legal one. Florence's sumptuary laws are clear. Respectable women must cover their hair in public. Violators can be fined, or worse, publicly shamed. But you and Chiara both know Mariana has never been one to play by the rules. I bet she'll blame the wind, Chiara says, eyes twinkling. You smile, tuck the ivory pin deeper into your hair, and step toward the door. Outside, the wind has picked up again. So you take one more glance in the mirror, touch the edges of your netted crispine, and tighten your shawl. It's not just about hair. It never is. Out the door you go. Your secrets, like your strands, are gathered and tucked away at least for now. The sun is higher now, flooding the cobbled streets with that peculiar golden warmth only Florence seems to master. You and Chiara walk side by side, skirts swishing just above the dust, weaving your way toward the Mercato Nuovo. Your steps are small partly to avoid drawing too much attention, and partly because the breeze is playing mischief again, trying to lift the hem of your shawl and untie the knot beneath your chin. Chiara leans closer and says, "Let's stop by Lucia's stall. She has new hennons." You groan quietly. The hennon, Florence's current fashion darling, imported from France, absurdly tall and shaped like an ice cream cone for the head. And worst of all, it requires serious commitment to wear properly. Wire frame, silk drapery, hair folded up tightly like a little secret scroll. One sneeze, and the whole structure might list to the left like a sinking ship. Lucia greets you both with a curtsy and presents 3 hennons for inspection. One is a soft sky blue with tiny silver threads running through the veil. Another is wine-colored, deep and moody like whispered poetry. The third, ivory silk, stiff with starch, clearly for a woman with something to prove. You touch the sky blue one light, smooth, faintly smelling of rosemary. Chiara's eyes widen. "That one will catch the sun," she says. "Everyone will look." That's exactly the problem. As you both debate the structural integrity of the hennon, Lucia adds that the new bishop has spoken out against excessive headwear. Something about vanity and blocking the view of the altar. Historians still argue whether the church was genuinely offended by women's fashion, or simply annoyed at not being able to see past it. You decide not to buy one today. Instead, Lucia shows you her newest batch of crispine slider netting, made from twisted strands of horse hair and dyed with saffron. One in particular catches your eye, a crispine with tiny pearls stitched along the edge, so subtle they barely gleam. It's the kind of ornamentation that says, "Yes, I'm elegant," without shouting it through a cathedral. Chiara insists on trying on one of the hennons anyway. As she balances the tower of fabric on her head, she nearly loses her balance and you nearly collapse laughing. A merchant passing by tips his hat, bemused. Chiara, cheeks flushed, adjusts the veil and whispers, "You know why I like them. Because you can hide anything underneath." You raise an eyebrow. She continues, "Last year, I smuggled Biscay into Mass under mine. My cousin smuggled letters, and my aunt once tucked in a dagger." You blink. "A dagger. Only once." She said it was for appearances. You both laugh again, but there's a spark of something serious in her tone. It's a reminder that hair coverings in Florence aren't just about fashion or modesty. They're about identity, power, mystery, and sometimes, yes, smuggling secrets. You wander through the rest of the market, and with each step, you spot more varieties of headwear than you can name. A widow in heavy black veils that drag along her shoulders like morning wings. A bride in soft pink netting, jiggling beneath her mother's stern gaze. A little girl with flowers pinned into her braids, trying to walk like a lady but running like a sparrow. Each covering tells a story. and each story has layers like the lion folds tucked beneath the sill. You pass by a fountain, its waters rippling under a gust of wind. You stop for a moment, and catch your own reflection. Your crispine holds steady. The ivory pin glints like a wing. Your hair, your thoughts, your secrets, they're all in place. Chiara bumps your shoulder gently. "Still with us?" You nod. She adds, "Next time, we try a turban." You smile, because of course she would say that. The wind lifts again. You reach instinctively to secure your veil, fingers brushing the seam. No damage done. You both continue walking heads high, coverings intact. For now. Afternoon light has begun to slant, painting the market stalls in warm amber. You and Chiara part ways at the arched bridge by the river, promising to meet again before evening bells. Your crispine still holds firm, though you adjust the knot beneath your chin for good measure. The breeze, though persistent, has learned to respect your skill. Returning home, you pause in the courtyard. There, beneath a blooming pomegranate tree, stands your grandmother dressed in her eternal shade of ash gray, shoulders straight, fingers gnarled from years of embroidery. She is, as always, tending to the household's herb garden. She doesn't look up when she speaks. "You've been in the market," she says. "I can smell the cinnamon on your hem." You smile. There's no escaping her nose. As you approach, she sets aside her shears and beckons you closer. Without warning, she unties your crispine and lets your hair fall free. You gasp. "Nana," you whisper. "What if someone sees?" She waves the idea away like a buzzing fly. "There's no one here but Rosemary and me." Her fingers thread gently through your hair. She hums a tune older than Florence, older than rules. Then she says, "It's time you learned the old ways." You blink. "Old ways." She nods toward the house. "Follow me." Inside her chamber, which smells of beeswax and old parchment, she opens a lacquered chest you've never been allowed to touch. Inside, a tangle of antique covering, some simple, some impossibly ornate. There's a faded veil from Siena, a koi from Naples, even a frayed snood with golden bells that chime when you shift it. But what she lifts out is unexpected, a delicate hairnet, shimmering with what seems to be copper thread. It glows softly, even in the dim light. "This," she says, "belonged to my grandmother, and her grandmother before that." You reach out. It's lighter than you imagine, and warm. "She used it," Nana continues, "when she didn't want to be overheard. The thread, they say, confuses the air." You stare. "Is that true?" She chuckles. "Historians still argue whether women used copper-threaded nets for privacy or for style. I say, why not both?" She hands it to you. "But remember," she adds, "this is not for markets. Not for mass. This is for the in-between." You want to ask what she means, but she's already turning away, fussing over a tin of lavender buds. You return to your room, copper net in hand, and stare at yourself in the mirror. Loose hair scandalous. Yes, but in this quiet hour, the rules seem to loosen. You put it on. The netting fits snugly, holding your hair in a gentle lattice. You tilt your head. It makes you look older. Wiser. Or at least more like someone with her own secrets. You sit by the window with your sewing and wait for the bells to toll, signaling the approach of vespers. Down below, the street stirs with energy again. Women emerge from shadows, adjusting veils, whispering over bread baskets. Somewhere, a dog barks. A child drops a bundle of kindling. Life resumes its quiet rhythm. And your hair. It stays exactly where you asked it to be. Tucked in. Tied back. Guarded by a net of copper and memory. You wonder what else you'll inherit, now that the veil has lifted, if only slightly. Evening falls gently over Florence, with a kind of hush that settles between rooftops and cloisters. Shadows stretch long over the stone, and the air cools just enough to raise goosebumps. In this moment, before lamps are lit and prayers are whispered, there is an old tradition that persists among the women of your district. It's called la chiacchiera del cortile, the courtyard chatter. You step into the communal courtyard behind your home, hair hidden once more beneath your crispine, though the copper-threaded net remains tucked secretly in your apron pocket. There's a kind of unspoken magic here, where women gather with their baskets, their stools, and their opinions. You spot Giulietta, always first to arrive, hunched over a pile of freshly washed linens, her veil already slipping sideways from the effort. Next to her is young Beatrice, who still wears her hair too loosely, and pretends not to care. And of course, Domenica the white, always wrapped in mourning black, with a face like carved marble and a voice that can cut fruit. You settle onto your stool as the conversations begin, always in whispers at first. Someone remarks that Signora Ferux's scarf was sheer enough to scandalize the saints. Another claims to have seen a servant wearing her mistress' veil. And then of course the topic turns to hair. Domenica, ever sharp, lifts her head. "I heard," she says, "that in Rome, women err, plucking their hairlines to appear more noble." You blink. "Plucking," she nods. "Right here," she gestures across her brow. "The more forehead, the more wisdom, apparently," Beatrice mutters, "or the more wind that gets in." You all laugh softly, careful not to wake the household cats lounging in the flower pots. A small dispute arises about the correct method for setting curls without heat. One woman insists on beeswax. Another swears by drying them in a basket lined with warm stones. Yet another, who doesn't actually speak, just gestures dramatically, holds up a lemon and grins. Historians still argue whether these beauty techniques were passed down through mothers or learned from traveling tradeswomen. But here, in this twilight courtyard, truth blends with tradition like tea with honey. You listen more than you speak, and as the sky deepens to velvet, you feel a certain pride. These women may speak softly, may move in shadows, may wrap their hair in obedience, but they are the memory keepers. The keepers of the little tricks, the whispers, the true rules. And within those layers of linen, of conversation, of memory lies a form of power. Gilead nudges you gently. You haven't spoken all evening, she says. Tell us, do you believe hair has a memory? You consider. Then, I think perhaps it remembers who's touched it. And how. They all go quiet for a moment. Then, Domenica, with the tiniest of smirks, says, then mine must miss someone. Lather again. A little louder this time. Even the cats twitch. As the bells ring for vespers, the women begin to gather their things. Scarves are straightened. Nets adjusted. Secrets tucked back into place. You stand, feeling the soft weight of your own hair beneath the crispine. It's still there. Still yours. And, perhaps, still listening. One by one, the women disappear into their doorways, like candle flames being gently snuffed out. You're the last to leave. The stars blink open above. And your hair hidden, woven. Remember, drifts quietly beneath silk and shadow. Later that night, after the bells have rung and the shutters are latched, you sit cross-legged on your chamber floor with a small wooden box in your lap. The box is carved with ivy leaves, its brass clasp cool to the touch. You haven't opened it in months. Inside, the quiet things. A ribbon dyed with walnut husk. A lock of hair from your younger sister, clipped the day she entered the convent. A dried orange blossom from the wedding of someone who no longer writes. And folded carefully in the bottom corner, your mother's old coif, still carrying the faintest scent of lavender and clove. You unfold it now. The lion is worn thin in places, the edges mended twice over. You remember her wearing it the day she taught you how to braid hair in silence, letting fingers speak in place of words. She said, when you touch someone's hair, you're closer to their thoughts than even their confessor. You believed her. You still do. Outside, the wind picks up again, soft but persistent, rattling the iron latch on the window. You rise, securing the shutter, and in that moment catch your reflection once more in the warped tin mirror. Your crispine is off, your hair undone, falling over your shoulders like Evie. You hardly recognize yourself. Slowly, deliberately, you begin to plait it. First into 2, then into 3, then into a thick rope that rests down your back. Your fingers move with muscle memory to cross, smooth. The rhythm is soothing. You hum without realizing it. They say hair holds energy. That dreams can be woven into it. That fears not themselves near the nape of the neck, and must be brushed out with care. Historians still argue whether women of the Renaissance performed nighttime grooming out of hygiene, ritual, or spiritual protection. You think it was all three. You finish the braid and tie it with the walnut ribbon. Then, with a mischievous flick of your wrist, you reach into your apron and pull out the copper-threaded net from earlier. You slip it on, hair and all, like a whisper returning to its home. As it settles against your scalp, you swear you hear something soft, like a sigh, or perhaps the whisper of many generations leaning close. You climb into bed. But tonight, before sleep, you do something you haven't done since you were small. You speak. You whisper your hopes just a few into your hair. You don't expect answers. Only memory. Only keeping. And then, as the last candle gutters out, you drift. In your dream, you are walking through an orchard. The trees are heavy with fruit, and your hair trails behind you like a banner in the wind, untouched, unjudged, and finally free. Morning comes slowly, as if Florence itself has decided to rise late. Light seeps through the shutters like warm milk, softening the harsh lines of the room. You wake not with a start, but with a slow stretch, your braid still intact, your copper net shifted slightly askew, but holding. Isabetta enters. Without knocking, carrying a bundle of linens and a look of mild exasperation. You slept with your hair wrapped again, she mutters, as if speaking to the ghosts rather than you. One day it'll tangle into your dreams and never let go. You grin sleepily. She begins unwrapping the copper net, pausing briefly as if unsure whether to scold or marvel. Where did this come from? She asks. You shrug. Inheritance. She doesn't press further. Instead, she returns to her usual rhythm, brushing, separating, smoothing. The scent of rosemary oil mingles with morning air. Your scalp tingles where fingers tug gently, and you realize there's comfort in being tended to. In being restored to public form. Isabetta, ever practical, suggests the saffron cap again, but you shake your head. No crispine today, you say softly. Her brows rise. Then what? You reach into your drawer and produce something unusual, a simple kerchief, dyed dusky plum, embroidered at the corner with your initial something. You stitched months ago but never wore. She nods approvingly, though she mutters, "You'll need pins. The wind still talks too loud this week." As she fastens it, you watch the process in the mirror, how the cloth transforms you. Not elaborate, not noble, but quietly firm. It's not a look of status. It's a look of choice. You head to the kitchen, where Nana is sipping chicory from a cracked mug. She eyes your head, says nothing, then nods almost imperceptibly, as if you've passed a test you didn't know you were taking. You spend the morning in the study chamber, reading by the window. A book of herbal lore, with curious annotations in the margins. Someone likely your aunt has scribbled, basil for clarity, thyme for memory, rosemary for stubborn women. You smile. Outside, a group of schoolboys chase a dog up the alley. Their laughter echoes between the walls like birds startled into flight. One of them throws a stone too high, and it hits a shutter. A woman yells. The boys scatter. You turn the page. Midday arrives quietly. You tie your kerchief tighter before stepping out. Today's errand is simple: retrieve a spool of silver thread for Nana's embroidery. The thread merchant is near the Duomo, tucked between a bookseller and a man who sells boiled chestnuts. As you pass through the plaza, you see dozens of women, each with a different style of covering. It's a silent parade of choices, restrictions, statements, and traditions. One wears a hennin so tall you wonder how she gets through doorways. Another has a silk wrap tied like a turban, bold and elegant. Yet another bareheaded carries herself like a storm cloud, defiant and glorious. You feel no need to judge them. Only to wonder, what are they carrying under all that fabric? Historians still argue whether head coverings were mandated expressions of morality, or self-fashioned codes of communication. But watching them, no heads tilted, cloth fluttering, you're struck by a thought. Maybe the hair was never the point. Maybe it was the choice to reveal or consult that whispered everything. You tuck that thought into your kerchief like a pressed flower, and continue on your way. The thread merchant, Maestro Lorenzo, is hunched behind his stall, surrounded by coils of color, skeins of gold, spools of flaxen twine, hanks of crimson wool hanging like trophies above his head. He recognizes you immediately. "Ah, la ragazza del Trexluni," he says with a crooked smile. "The girl with the long braids." You smile back, polite but cautious. Lorenzo has known your family for years. He speaks with reverence for your grandmother's embroidery, and mild suspicion about your growing independence. You request the silver thread. He obliges, pulling a new spool from beneath a velvet cloth and inspecting it in the light. As he wraps it, he leans in slightly and says, "You know, the Duchess wore silver in her wedding veil. Said it protected her from envy." You nod, unsure whether this is folklore or a sales tactic or both. He adds, with a glimmer in his eye, "The thread doesn't just hold fabric. It holds memory, tension, intention. Depends on the hands that work it." You thank him, pay, and tuck the spool into your bag. As you turn to leave, a voice stops you. She shouldn't be walking alone. You freeze for a moment. It's not directed at you exactly, just uttered nearby, by an older woman standing near a stall of olive oil soaps. She's speaking to a companion, but loud enough for you to hear. She's unescorted, and not even a proper veil. You don't turn around. You don't need to. You've heard the tone before, that perfect blend of concern and condescension. Your heart beats a little faster, not from shame, but from the sudden weight of decision. Do you respond? Or let the breeze carry it away? You choose silence. Not because you're afraid, but because some things don't need answering. Some things speak through the set of your shoulders, the steadiness of your stride, and the nod of your kerchief tied by your own hand. As you continue down the street, a child offers you a wilted violet. You smile and take it, tucking it into the ribbon that binds your braid. A silent decoration. A wordless reply. The Duomo rises ahead, towering and solemn, casting its long shadow. You pause before entering, adjusting your shawl and checking the thread of your kerchief. Still in place. Still yours. Inside, the cathedral hums with quite a different kind of wind, made from whispered prayers, footfalls, and candle smoke. You slip into a pew near the back. Your hands rest in your lap, fingers tracing the edge of the silver spool in your pocket. Near the altar, a woman kneels. Her head is covered by a mantilla so delicate it looks like breath. As she leans forward in prayer, a small curl of hair escapes, clinging to her cheek like a tear. You wonder what story that curl tells. Historians still debate whether women meant to let strands fall during worship or if it was simply the folly, a friction, of movement, of fabric too fine. Some claim it was flirtation. Others say it was fatigue. You think it might have been a moment of truth. You stay for a while, not to pray exactly, but to sit among stories woven in cloth, stone, and silence. When you leave, you step into a different light. The city has shifted. Evening creeps along the rooftops again, and you know the bells will soon summon the courtyard women once more. You walk home slowly, letting the breeze do what it pleases. It tugs at your kerchief. Yes, but it does not win. Because now, you understand, the covering doesn't just hide. It speaks. And tonight, yours says, "I decide." Twist Twilight has woven itself into the sky by the time you return home, trailing soft lavender and deepening blue behind the rooftops. The lamps along the alley flicker, not yet fully lit, like fireflies debating whether to wait. The silver thread in your pocket feels warmer now, as though it's absorbed something from the walk intention. Defiance, or maybe just the rhythm of your steps. As you cross the threshold into your home, the sound of gentle clattering from the upper floor tells you Nana is embroidering again. Isabetta is nowhere to be seen, likely in the kitchen, whispering with the butcher's apprentice again. You pass quietly through the atrium, and your eyes drift to the mirror in the hall. The dust light hits it just right. You pause. You look older tonight. Not aged, exactly, but resolved. You untie your kerchief slowly and let your braid fall free again. The violet from earlier has crumpled slightly, but still clings to the ribbon. You smile at it, a little private joke between you and the day. Upstairs, you change into your evening gown, a soft plum dress with wide sleeves and a neckline lined in faded lace. Simple, unadorned, the kind that says, "I'm not performing for you. I'm preparing for myself." Then, with deliberate care, you retrieve the silver thread and wind it through the hem of your spine. Not enough to be seen. Just enough to know it's there. Tonight, there's a gathering. A small supper at the Villa Rossoli, hosted by your cousin Fior. It's meant to be light musicians, poetry, candied fruit, but you know better. Where there are women, there are performances. And beneath the laughter and verses, the games begin of glances, gestures, and most of a attire. When you arrive, the villa glows in soft candlelight. The garden is alive with scent, jasmine, basil, and the faint hint of orange rind in the wine. The guests are mostly women, young and old, wearing layers of silk and intrigue. Their head coverings range from towering hennons to sheer mantillas, each a chess move in its own right. Fior greets you in a veil so gossamer it seems held together by breath. She smiles as she takes your hands and says, "You always were the quiet one. But I hear your name whispered more than anyone's." You raise an eyebrow. And what are they whispering now? She leans in. That you wore your hair uncovered in the market, and didn't flinch. You let the comment hang. Then say, "Perhaps the wind wore it better than I could." She laughs, clinks her glassed ears, and vanishes into a swirl of music and chatter. You take a seat by the fountain, alone but not lonely. From here, you can observe the whole affair. The girl in green lace pretending not to look at the poet. The older widow with a peacock feather in her veil. The two sisters whispering behind fans about something that makes them jiggle, then frown, then jiggle again. And then there's you with a crispine stitched with silver no one can see, but everyone seems to sense. A young musician approaches with a lute and asks if you'd like a tune. You nod. He plays a slow, winding melody, one that feels like candlelight and long hair dripping after a bath. Your eyes close. Not in sleep, but in listening. Historians still argue whether women were allowed to shape the rules of fashion in salons like this, or if they were simply adapting survival into style. You're not sure. But tonight, it feels like ownership. The song ends. The chatter resumes. Someone begins to dance. You slip away early, stepping back into the night while the sky is still full of breath and stars. You don't cover your head this time. The crispine rests in your hand like a ribbon of moonlight. The wind welcomes you home. And for one seat does not tug. It bows. The next morning begins with bells. Not the soft, lullaby chimes of the cathedral, but the sharp, insistent clang of the city watch, signaling something unusual in the square. You rise slowly, braid unraveling from sleep, and peer through the shutters. A crowd is forming near the magistrate's loggia. People gather like fabric pleats tight, whispering, curious. The scent of fresh bread from the bakery is overwhelmed by the more pungent smell of anticipation. Isabetta bursts into your chamber without knocking. Someone's been fined, she announces, breathless, for violating the headwear statute. It's Mariana. You freeze. Mariana, the one with the loose curls and the sharper tongue. You remember her laughing in the market, daring the wind to undo her, daring the law to blink first. She wore her hair uncovered 3 days in a row. Isabetta continues, half in awe, half in dread. They say she claimed she had a headache and couldn't bear the weight. You can almost hear Mariana's voice saying it. Smooth, confident, just sarcastic enough to cause scandal. You dress quickly and head toward the square. The crowd is dense but not hostile, more like an audience waiting for a play. The magistrate stands stiffly at a podium, reading a decree. Mariana stands beside him, utterly unrepentant. She wears no veil, no scarf, no crispine, only a crown of loosely braided hair, gleaming like a two is on trial. The punishment is minor, a fine, some public penance, a written apology, but the weight of the moment is anything but small. People murmur. Some shake their heads. Others smile behind their hands. You catch her eye. She winks. You don't smile back. Not exactly. But something shifts behind your ribs. Later that day, you sit with Nana as she mends a frayed sleeve. She doesn't ask about the trial, of course she already knows. Instead, she speaks while her needle dances. There's a kind of truth in how a woman covers her head, she says. and another kind in how she does it. You say nothing, but you run your fingers along the edge of your crispine, the one with silver thread. Later still, you go to your writing desk. You remove the small diary you keep hidden behind the herbal compendium. You open it and begin a new page. Mariana stood uncovered beneath the full sun, and not even the magistrate could make her flinch. Her hair was not just hair, it was a banner, a sentence, a refusal. I wonder how many veils we wear that aren't made of fabric at all. You stop writing. You touch your braid. And then, quietly, you untie it. You sit at the window, hair loose, face to the breeze, the copper net in your lap and the silver-threaded crispine beside you. Not as defiance. Not as declaration. Just because. Because the wind has a right to know what it's been trying to touch. Because some mornings are not about modesty or mystery but about permission. Historians still debate whether these moments, small, domestic, wordless, are ever recorded in any real sense. But you think, maybe they never needed to be. Maybe the women themselves were the archive. Maybe the wind remembers everything. The seasons have shifted again. You feel it first in the air, cooler, cleaner, with a faint scent of pressed grapes and wood smoke curling into every corner of the city. Florence in autumn is a different creature. The sun is lazier, shadows longer, and the chatter in courtyards turns to cofframides and thicker shawls. With the change comes another transformation, the way women dress their heads. No more gauzy veils or sheer scarves that flutter like moth wings. Now it's all about layers laid beneath wool, silk tucked under velvet, wraps that cover the ears and whisper of practicality. The head becomes a fortress again, not just of fashion but of warmth. You sit beside Nana as she unfolds a bundle of seasonal coverings. She lays them out like relics, an embroidered wool cap lined with rabbit fur, a hooded coif dyed deep wine red, a net snood that smells faintly of clove and hearth ash. Thick one, she says. You hesitate. Each carries weight. Not in grams but in memory. You finally choose a soft gray hood with a gently scalloped edge. It's heavy but comforting, like being told you're safe without needing the words. As you try it on, Nana watches you in the mirror. You're thinking too loudly again, she says. You blink. Emma, she smiles. Always. Your braid moves when you're working through something. You hadn't noticed, but it's true. Your braid has been twitching like a cat's tail all morning. What you've been thinking about, what you haven't dared to say aloud, is a letter. One from your cousin Fior. She's invited you to Venice for the winter. To study lacework. To assist at a small workshop in the Castello district. To be among women who stitch not just hems, but networks. You want to go. You also don't know if you can. Leaving Florence, even briefly, means stepping beyond the watchful eyes of those who remember you in braids and chapel veils. It means risking being reseen not just as a daughter or granddaughter, but as someone becoming herself. Historians still argue whether young women of the Renaissance ever felt such internal tension, torn between obligation and opportunity. But reading between the lines of their preserved letters, their hesitant sketches, their annotated prayer books, you can almost hear the pull. You touch the edge of the hood and think, would this keep the Venetian wind out? That night, you prepare dinner with Isabetta. You peel root vegetables while she stirs a pot of barley. You ask, casually, have you ever been to Venice? She pauses, then shrugs. Once, years ago, smelled like salt and secrets. You both laugh. Then she adds, quietly, if you go, take extra pens. The air there likes to steal things. You nod, filing it away with all the other small wisdoms women hand each other like folded notes. Later, in your room, you braid your hair again. Slower this time. Intentionally. Each loop, each cross, each tug feels like a sentence. You tuck the braid into the hood and fasten the ties beneath your chin. You stare at your reflection. You look prepared. Not ready, maybe, but willing. You leave the silver-threaded crispine on your dresser, beside the copper net and the violet ribbon, now dried to a quiet brown. They are not being abandoned. Just wristed. Because tomorrow, perhaps, the wind will carry you somewhere new. And your hair will go with you bound, covered, speaking in a language older than speech. The morning you depart for Venice, the sky is the color of warm stone, and the wind is gently as if Florence, for once, does not want to make you second-guess your decision. You rise before dawn. The house is quiet, heavy with sleep, but you're already dressed in your traveling cloak and boots, and your satchel lies by the door, neatly packed. Your head is wrapped in a soft wool coif, layered under a traveling hood dyed the color of ripe plums. Beneath it, your hair is braided, and pinned with a care that borders on reverence. You tuck the silver-threaded crispine inside your bag, alongside a bundle of letters, a jar of lavender salve, and a tin cum passed down through 3 generations. You move silently through the atrium, and out into the street. Nana stands waiting at the gate. She says nothing at first, only reaches up and tightens the edge of your hood, her fingers lingering near your cheek. You'll be cold by the coast, she murmurs. Don't let the wind think you're fragile. You nod. Then she presses something into your hand, an embroidered sachet no bigger than a matchbox. Hair herbs, she explains. Lavender, rose petals, and a sprig of sage. For sleep. For clarity. For remembering who you are. You slip it into your pocket. Then, without flourish, she says, go. The road to Venice is long and winding, and the journey by cart is less romantic than most ballads would have you believe. Your hood slips more than once. The wind sneaks in around your collar. Your braid comes loose by the third town, and you spend 15 minutes trying to replait it by feel alone, much to the amusement of the merchant beside you. But by the time you reach the outskirts of the city crossing bridges where water slaps against stone like impatient applause, you've settled into a rhythm. The hood has molded to your shape. Your hair, though tired, is still obedient. And the sachet in your pocket has released a warm scent that somehow keeps you grounded. Venice is nothing like Florence. The air smells of salt, tar, and old coins. The sky reflects on water like a mood ring. People speak faster here, move differently, and their headwear is even more eccentric than what you're used to. Here, veils are often beaded, twisted into knots you've never seen before. Some women don't wear anything at all on their heads, their hair pinned with pearls and audacity. It's both shocking and liberating. You arrive at the lace workshop in the Castello district near sunset. It's smaller than expected, just 3 women working in a narrow room that smells of starch and tea. They welcome you with quiet curiosity. You're shown a bunk, a basin, and a pile of lion scraps. No one asks about Florence. No one mentions Mariana or magistrates or sumptuary laws. Here, your story resets. That night, you wash your face in cold water and sit at the shared mirror with the others. You undo your braid. The girl beside you, Lucia, with blunt-cut bangs and a laugh like a bell, glances over. You braid before sleep. You nod. Habit. Shit. Smiles. I wrap mine in lace scraps. Keeps the dreams from getting tangled. You exchange tricks. Rosemary oil. Braiding while humming. How to secure short layers with bits of thread. One girl suggests sleeping upright. You all laugh at that. Historians still argue whether women traveling alone were bold, desperate, or foolish. But sitting here, surrounded by needles, thread, and laughter, you think perhaps they were just curious. Curious enough to follow the breeze, even when it ruffled every rule they were taught to obey. You press the sachet under your pillow, and in the hush before sleep, you whisper again, not a secret this time, but a vow to learn, to stitch, to return maybe, but not unchanged. Then, with your hair unbraided, uncovered, and completely yours, you drift off. The tide murmurs outside, and the wind no longer asks permission. It simply carries you forward. Days in Venice blur like watercolor. The workshop becomes your new orbit thread, lace, repetition. Your fingers grow nimbler, your stitches cleaner. Each morning you tie your hair differently, experimenting in ways you never dared back in Florence. One day, you twist it into a coil and pin it with a scrap of lace dipped in rosewater. Another, you braid it tightly and let the ends curl free, like ivy climbing over a windowsill. You notice the other women doing the same. Styles change quietly here, like the tides. No one says anything directly, but everyone sees. Lucia begins calling you Fiorative, one who blooms. You don't correct her. In the workshop, gossip stitches itself between patterns. Whose cousin eloped with a gondolier? Which noblewoman had a veil custom dyed to match her husband's crest? Who was fined for wearing too much gold on a Tuesday? And through it all, the conversation returns again and again to the head. The veil is a veil, says one girl, but the hair beneath that's where the story hides. That afternoon, a woman named Signora Bertrami visits the workshop. She's older, regal, veiled in navy gauze so sheer it might as well be fog. She brings with her a commission, a delicate lace border for a morning hood. But tasteful, she insists. No dramatics. As she examines sample patterns, her eyes settle on you. You're from Florence, she says, not a question, just a statement of fact. You nod. She hums, then adds, do they still police the shape of your head there? The room falls silent for a beat too long. Then Lucia snorts. Signora Bertrami chuckles softly and selects a pattern. She turns to you before leaving and says, you know, there's power in covering something so beautiful. And also in deciding not to. She leaves behind a coin and an idea that clings longer than either. That night, you walk along the canal after supper. Your reflection ripples in the water beside you, wooded, thoughtful, familiar and unfamiliar at once. You pause at a footbridge, the kind with the iron rails worn smooth by years of resting arms. You reach up and undo your hair. The breeze off the water is brisk, almost sharp, and your hair catches it like a sail. It flutters, tangles, reclaims the space around your shoulders. No onlookers. No judgments. Just the soft hush of boats and lapping water. Historians still argue whether women used hair as rebellion or adornment. You think, perhaps both. Or neither. Maybe it's just that, for once, it's theirs. You pull out a ribbon plum-colored, embroidered with your initials and tie a small section behind your ear. A nod to the past. A promise to the self. You walk home slow. In your room, under candlelight, you open your travel satchel. The silver-threaded crispine is still there, tucked between pages of a pressed herbarium. You lift it. trace the stitching, and smile. Then, carefully, you set it beside a new piece of lace you're working on. Florentine style with a Venetian twist. You'll wear it when the time is right. Not because you must, but because you choose to. The letter arrives on a Monday, sealed with red wax and carrying the subtle scent of rosemary and aged ink. It's from your grandmother. You break the seal gently. Her handwriting is as precise as ever looped, elegant, firm. The letter is brief. The rains have begun early. The pomegranate tree is bare. Isabetta misses your help with the laundry, though she'll never admit it. If Van Nuys hasn't turned your head too completely, know that you are missed not out of habit, but affection. Come back when you're ready. Not a day sooner. Bring lace. Bring stories. Bring yourself. You read it twice. And then again. You fold the letter slowly and set it on your windowsill, weighed down by your crispine, the one with the silver thread. Outside, the candle laps at the stones below, reflecting the shifting sky. A gull cries somewhere far off, indifferent to the soft storm brewing in your chest. You've been in Van Nuys for nearly 2 months now. Your stitches have grown finer. Your hands have grown surer. Your thoughts deeper. You've learned to thread a needle in the dark. You've learned the difference between Valenciennes lace and Venetian punto in area. And you've learned that there are women here older, quieter, who wear no head coverings at all and still command respect with just a glance. This morning, Lucia caught you staring at your reflection. You miss Florence? She asked gently. I miss who I was in Florence, you replied. But I'm not sure I want to be her again. She had only smiled and said, then bring her with you. Let her meet who you are now. Historians still argue whether identity in the Renaissance was fixed by birth or carved by choices. You think it might be braided, looped, and crossed, and retied endlessly. The person you were, the one you are, the one you're still becoming, they're all held in the same thread. That evening, you begin packing slowly. Not because you've decided, but because the motion helps you think. You fold your wool hood, your lacework, your sachets. You place the copper threaded net in it. Small wooden box, lined with dried sage. You wrap your Florentine crispine in soft linen, and tuck it beside a half-finished embroidery hoop, a flowering vine growing from a comb. Then, carefully, you prepare a letter in return. Nana, am not finished here, but am fuller. The wind is different and Venice doesn't push, it offers. Tell Isabetta I'll braid her hair when I return. Tell the pomegranate tree to hold on. And yes, I'll bring lace. And maybe more than a few stories. You seal it with plum-colored wax. No ribbon. No emblem. Just your name. As you write it now. You sit by the window as the city softens into sleep. Your hair is unbraided, falling in quiet waves over your shoulders. You wonder if someone were to sketch you now, what would they draw first? The face, the hair, or the choice? And perhaps that's what all this has been, not a rebellion, not a ritual, but the slow discovery that what you wear on your head doesn't define you, but what you choose to carry under it just might. Your final morning in Van Nuys begins in silence. The city seems to hold its breath as the sun rises, diffused behind a veil of fog. From your small room above the lace workshop, you hear the gentle creak of shutters, the rustle of bed linens, the scrape of a teacup on stone. Ordinary sounds, made sacred by the knowledge that you'll soon leave them behind. You sit on the edge of your cot, brushing your hair for the last time in this room. The bristles move through your braid with ease now. Your scalp no longer flinches, your hands no longer second-guess the motion. Each stroke is a memory. Each strand, a thread in the story you've woven here. You don't wrap your head immediately. Instead, you leave your hair bare for a few moments longer, letting it fall around your shoulders like a curtain being drawn for the final act. Lucia appears in the doorway, carrying a warm cloth bundle and a look that is part pride, part mischief. I made you something, she says. Don't thank me, it's not perfect. You unwrap it slowly. Inside is a small lace headband, delicately patterned with vines and tiny violets, stitched in your favorite dusky plum. It's wide enough to wear like a half veil, or fold into a band for travel. You trace its edges with your fingertips. It's beautiful. She shrugs. It's strong. Like you. That was harder. The two of you embrace. She doesn't cry. Neither do you. But something unbraids itself between you gently, naturally, like the loosening of fabric after a long day. You wrap your hair in the lace band, knotting it low at the nape of your neck. Not a statement. Not a signal. Just yours. As you descend the narrow staircase and step into the morning fog, the city greets you with its usual indifference. Boats rock gently in the canal. A baker dusts flour from his sleeves. The wind carries the smell of seaweed, salt, and roasted chestnuts. Your bag is light, but your steps are heavier, not from regret, but from meaning. Historians still argue whether women in your position, educated, mobile, unattached, ever truly belonged anywhere. But perhaps belonging isn't something handed to you. Perhaps it's something you stitch, strand by strand, in the quiet corners where choice meets identity. You pass the old bridge where you once untied your hair to the wind. This time, it stays braided, but not hidden. Because now, you know it's not about the veil. It's about the hand that ties it, and the freedom to leave it untied. The city fades behind you slowly, like a tapestry unrolling in reverse. The road back to Florence is long but familiar, and the rhythm of the wheels on cobblestone lulls you into that soft space between waking and sleep. You lean against the cart wall, hood up now, but not tight. The breeze slips in, gentle and curious. Your hair brushes your cheek like a lullaby, and your hands rest in your lap, fingers still remembering the movements of lace and calm and quiet rebellion. As the countryside unfolds, outside of vineyards, olive groves, distant bell towers, you let your breath slow. The smells of sea air fade, replaced by cypress and morning dew. You don't need to speak. You don't need to narrate. You've done enough for now. The stories you carry are tucked into your bag. The lace, the letter, the crispine, the memory of silver thread, and the knowledge that you are never again required to be the same version of yourself twice. You close your eyes. Somewhere far behind, the wind whistles past a shutter. Somewhere ahead, a pomegranate tree waits. And here, in this moment, in this hush, in this stillness, you rest. Unbraided, unrushed, unwritten. Good night.